And more recently, we've been doing what's called the Human Genome Project. Anybody know what that is? Say Human Genome Project. Go ahead.
It's the mapping of the human genome, and they've actually done it with samples of other species like fruit fly. They've all done that. Seaweed, I think, is one. And there's a couple others.
I think the goal would be to map as many as we can.
I think they've actually done the human genome. That was finished in late 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah. Read a fascinating book on it, from the library. There's all kinds of interesting things you find if you can map our genetic, we're mapping history. You can find all kinds of interesting things. Like, there was a group of people, I think it was in Africa, it was a tribe that said they were descended from Aaron, the brother of Moses, which is where the priestly lineage comes through in the scriptures, that people actually could go into that innermost sanctum of the temple. And for years, people just kind of dismissed that. But when they actually did this mapping, they found that they had the same marker in their genome in male, the Y chromosome, as other people they knew were in this Aaronic priesthood. So this thing that they had been saying that people didn't believe was found to be true. So there's all kinds of things they found that are very interesting. Like those of us who are white-skinned, that we actually came first through Asia. That the development of white skin was actually like the Himalayas, where you needed to have lighter skin for what is it, vitamin D or produce. So there's all kinds of interesting things that have happened because of this. But because we've mapped it, now we begin to look at, say, can we actually change it? And part of it is not just to fix things that might have been broken through mutation that may be good or bad, depending. Sometimes we're finding out. But also, could we enhance things? Could we make us better? Better than we were, better, stronger, faster. But the other thing is it just for individuals? Like to fix, my receding hairline, or is it something that all my children will inherit? Is it something that will be passed on so that it never happens again? And there are issues with that because once it's out there, you can't undo it. Right. Yeah.
There are mutations, though, and it could change practically at any time, and there are factors.
Right. So it's how do we work with all that? Because some of it happens already. What is it? What are we undoing? What are we enhancing? What's good and what's bad? And that's the thing I think we need to wrestle with. Other questions are these: genes often can control more than one trait. So changing them cause other issues that have passed on are now in the gene pool. Could be good. Could be good. It's like put this. It's not to say that something like this is just bad automatically. It's saying, are we asking the right questions as we do this? Gattaca is a good instance of, can you create two-tier human society, the haves and have-nots? If you look at the movie, if you look at things, especially like from the civil rights movement, a lot of the things, even the way they were saying things, reminds you of the issues we had. We still have issues of race, but specifically they were even talked about. Are you as good as other people? Are you screened out for various reasons? Healthcare is also an issue. The expense of healthcare being so high for things like this, can we afford exotic, rare treatments when other basic needs are not met? And what are good enhancements? And do we have a right to impose them on these children? The questions that we wrestle with. I'm going to ask first. Any thoughts? I'm just curious. How do you feel about some of this? Just raising them up. I know it's kind of overwhelming, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I'm going to go on because genetic, actually changing genetic code is not the only thing we're talking about, or fixing, or however we want to talk about it. The next one, go ahead, is we're going to have a video clip. Go one more.
Cloning tonight. Stark truth.
Yes, that was louder than the first one.
Death, and some of the hardest deaths to endure are the deaths of beloved pets. But what if we could overpower that death? Today, science has given us the ability to manufacture clones, exact genetic copies of mammals. And so tonight, let's meet a woman who made the decision to clone her dog, who says 6 figures is not too much to pay for. Here's ABC's Dan Harris.
You are looking at the moment when the love of Danielle Tarantola's life, in a sense, returned from the dead.
How cute.
This is the culmination of a more than 20-year odyssey, the result of an encounter with the growing, high-tech, and highly controversial industry of dog cloning. Danielle's journey started when she was 18 and she bought a dog named Trouble from a pet store. On her pillows, on her bedspread, and dressing him up in elaborate costumes. He cannot have been happy with this dog.
He was very, very handsome.
You loved this dog.
Loved him. Loved him to death.
And when Trouble died when he was nearly 18,
He was basically my son. So it was terrible. It was heartbreaking.
that is when she took her love for her dog to a level some people might find truly bizarre. She reached out to an animal cloning company in South Korea, the only place in the world where you can get your dog cloned. She provided them with a DNA sample of Trouble that she had banked when he was alive. The cost, $100,000, although Danielle, who had recently lost her job on Wall Street, convinced the company to give her half off because her journey was being chronicled by TLC for a show that airs next week. 50 grand. Did no part of you think that's just too much money?
No, I was willing to do it for 100. I got a deal.
A few months ago, Danielle got a phone call from the scientists in South Korea. The surrogate mother of Trouble's clone was successfully impregnated.
Just this morning in Korea, we've been able to confirm the pregnancy of Trouble.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Weeks later, the surrogate went into labor in the middle of the night as Danielle watched nervously via Skype.
Oh, how cute is he? He's so cute. Bye, Trouble. Mommy will see you soon.
Not all clients are so lucky. Quite often, as in the case of this man's dog, the clones do not survive.
Come on, puppy. Come on, my true love. Come on, my sweetheart. Speak up.
And that is just part of the reason that the dog cloning business is now so fiercely controversial. John Westendick wrote the book Dog Inc. about the dog cloning industry, which he says is based in South Korea because that country has much lower ethical standards for the treatment of dogs than we do here in America. If you're a scientist in South Korea and you're looking to clone dogs, it's a much better environment. This is a country where they farm dogs for the dinner table, right? So you can just rent them from the farmers for use in the laboratory. Hopefully everything goes okay, return them to the farmer. Not going to go okay. That's right. In Korea, some people eat dogs. And Westendick says some of the dogs who are used in the cloning process as egg donors or as surrogate moms are later sent back to dog farms where they are killed and eaten. Does that give you any pause?
I did ask them a lot of questions about the surrogate mom and what happened to her and, was she treated okay?
They told her and us that the surrogate used in Danielle's case, as well as all of the surrogates they used, are sent to a nice farm to live out their days. But John Westendick is not so sure.
It sort of sounds like, when you play your kid from the dog master. He's gone off to this lovely little farm.
He also worries it puts mankind on a slippery slope toward human cloning.
Once we've cloned man's best friend, how far behind might man be? It seems to be tilting closer to that.
That, however, is not an issue that appears to concern Danielle.
Well, you didn't me kisses.
Just a few weeks ago, the clone arrived at Danielle's home in New York City.
I couldn't believe it. It's amazing. Everything is the same. Everything. Even his personality is the same. What Trouble used to do, he does.
So his name is Double Trouble.
It's Double Trouble, yeah. The first one's Trouble. Second one's Double.
She is convinced Double Trouble is very similar to the original Trouble, but the truth is, there is no guarantee.
You're not really getting your dog coming back to life. You're getting a genetic duplicate or a twin. What's special about your dog, and that's the part that I don't think can be cloned.
What about the complaint that this is all a ripoff, that you're not getting the same dog, and you're being charged an enormous amount of money?
Right. Well, listen, what I did is definitely not for everybody to do. It was what I wanted, so it was, what I did.
Despite the criticism and the controversy, Danielle is undeterred. In the process of making Double Trouble, the South Koreans also produced a second clone. He will arrive at Danielle's house in weeks. She's thinking about naming him Triple Trouble. For Nightline, this is Dan Harris in New York.
So, I'm curious, how many of you have had pets you would never want cloned? reactions, I'm curious, you know, like I said, the answer's the same to dog. In life.
Like Liz said the other day when we were talking about it, you know, if she cloned me when I died, it would maybe be physically me, but I wouldn't have the memories that I had of us together. It wouldn't, you know, those things that are experiences that.
Mm-hmm. Things that make you.
Just go buy a Shih Tzu. If your dog was a Shih Tzu, go buy a Labrador. If your dog was a Labrador.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had college.
A long line.
Wonderful life.
Well, you know, it's just raising questions like, okay, what if, you know, your parent loses a child, you want to clone the child? Right, AI, yeah, like, yeah, that's right. One of the movie you can watch, AI. You know, and what kind of expectations does this child have now? You know, on it. Yeah, what would that be like to live up to that? So, now, just to be clear, and we were talking about genetic engineering, which is actually changing genetic code. Coding doesn't change the genetic code. You're basically just taking like an egg and you're putting in the code from a living organism or a once living organism to have that cell function as, you know, the original. But you see, yeah, you just surrogate. Now, there's a couple different things I think are interesting. Just leading the question we just had, you know, I had a number of friends who were twins. And what was interesting to me is they were very different personalities, right? And so you say, you know, are you actually going to get that? Just because your code is the same, is it the same person? Which I think is part of what we get confused. You know, she was saying, do you remember me? Right? Right, this, you know, this confusion. Who is this dog? What happens if that's a person? Like you said, you know, Adam, do you remember me? Right? So that, you know, there's that. One of the things already, you know, they talked a little bit about this. You remember Dolly the sheep was the first clone? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and click that. Which I'm starting to feel old because it didn't seem that long ago. There were 277 failed attempts when they made Dolly, and as you saw in there, which is frequent. So, you know, we're not really that great at doing this as we are doing it. There are frequent deaths and anomalies, mutations, deviations. So, you know, are we ready for this? It appears no one has cloned a human being. Appears, we don't know. Actually, some say they'll do it no matter what the regulations. Really, to be honest, with the size of the human race and the number of people out there, I have a feeling it's just a matter of time until it happens, right? People looking at for assisted reproduction, couples who can't conceive may pass on genetic disorders, single people who want to become parents. They produce an identical or sick child for tissue matches for treatment. Remember a few years ago, there was the couple who had another child because their daughter was dying and just needed bone marrow transplant, I think it was. And had another child just for the sake of that. Yeah, and they didn't, and it succeeded. The child, you know, was used as a donor without choice for that.
You can make cord blood and
Right.
save
Yeah.
them.
You know, replacement for a dead or dying child or loved one. Click on it. A lot of questions. What